Hey everybody, this is Carl back again for another Halloween movie review. I've been wanting to get to this one for a hot minute, especially after the whole fiasco of the trial earlier in the summer, or late in the summer. Uh, my first Johnny Depp movie that I wanted to review. Uh, I thought I can get to this, at least around September or so, but like things got caught up. But I figured this was fitting for my Halloween movie month review, and I want to cover this uh, Johnny Depp movie, Secret Window. It's kind of mm, people have mixed feelings on it. I don't know if it's like really on people's radar as far as like favorite Johnny Depp film, but I honestly would agree. But it could easily, for me, follow in the line of honorable mentions at the very most, because I think Johnny Depp's performance isn't something like we typically see from his other films. Uh, of course, eventually I want to get to the Pirates films, obviously. Well, I definitely want to go through the Pirates film, but maybe eventually down the line we'll get to uh, the other films. But yeah, Secret Window. This is based off a Stephen King novel called Secret Window, Secret Garden, and of course, like The Shining and probably a couple other books, the movies kind of tweak certain things. The Shining is very known. It's very known that The Shining, Stephen King wasn't all too particularly happy with certain turns that it took in the film. Uh, I'm not sure about this one in particular, but it's definitely some. I imagine it has to be because there definitely was a change in the ending compared to what happened in the actual book. I didn't read the book personally, nor pretty much any of the Stephen King books. I never really read. Only saw at least most of his films. Yeah, like I definitely watched Misery at least once. I watched The Shining a couple of times. Uh, I never watched it. I don't really, because I'm not really a horror guy like that. Uh, The Secret Window was like quite a few times because I think my stepmother rented this. No, no. Well, no, scratch that. She actually bought this DVD. I think I still have it. But I watched it because years ago, I saved it on my DVR because I actually dig it personally. But it stars, of course, like Johnny Depp, directed by David Coep. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Uh, Also stars John Turturro, Maria as John Shooter. Johnny Depp plays Mort Rainey. Maria Bello plays Amy Rainey. Timothy Hutton plays Ted Milner. Lynn Carew plays Sheriff Dave Newsom. And you got Charles S. Dutton playing the private investigator Ken uh, Karsech. And I'm rewatching this, and from after so many years went by since the last time I watched this, I don't know when was the last time I watched this. It had to be at least 5 years ago or so, 5 or 6 years ago since I last watched this film. At least I like to think, because it's been a while. And through the course of that time, I watched other people's reviews about other Stephen King films, and there's like uh, particular gimmicks that he does that's played out in his respective films. And, like the helpful black person somehow like dying, just like in The Shining. Uh, a lot of his creations are like the lead roles are not all, but there's at least a few here that are somehow writers off into an isolated place, whereas hardly any quick access to help. And when like creepy things are starting to happen, it's like once they put it like a little. I mean, I'm pretty sure we kind of knows, but it wasn't like that hitting your face unless you are literally watching them back to back, or somebody points it out to you. Then you go like, oh. But yeah, uh, Mort, I can call him Morty. It's so funny. And now we got like we're watching, like if you watch Rick and Morty now, it's like every time you hear the word Morty, you think immediately of the cartoon character. Oh, jeez, Rick. So Mort is living in a cabin somewhere off in well, it seems like Maine, but upstate New York, called Tashmore. Not a real place, but he's suffering from writer's block. It was 6 months where he's dealing with, like, in the midst of a divorce. Because in the beginning, I like the opening of this scene. I mean, of the opening of this movie, because bits and pieces throughout the film, you hear him talking to himself, or at least thinking to himself, and that kind of really unravels by the end of the film. But just Morty's outside his of this motel room, and then you don't know what's going on until because he just bursts into a hotel room. It's kind of clear. Even when I first saw this, and I was in my early teens, and it's kind of like I watched plenty enough movies to can at least gleam after a minute or two, what's possible, was probably going down. His wife ended up cheating on him with their best friend Ted, with his former best friend. And now, fast forward 6 months later, he's moved out of their home in New York into a cabin by himself, which is weird because typically in this kind of stuff, yeah, the guy's always moving out. It's never like, because typically if a guy's moving out, he's the one who did dirty. She's the one who did dirty. She should be the one moving out. It's just like, it's like, why does he have to be the one that got to find a place on his own? She should be one. Be like, it's just weird. It's like, if she cheated, first of all, why you had to go to the motel? Secondly, when you got busted, why does Moore has the one to move out? Why can't you move out and go to the guy you slept with? Clearly, y'all, are taking the relationship actually seriously because y'all still together. So it's just weird that she keeps the house and the guy who she cheated on was moving in with her. It's like, that's just, bonkers to me how that worked out. But anyway, because of this movie, it's kind of got me, it had me, when I first saw this movie, it had me curious about, like, writing stories. Because, it's like certain movies kind of like get you, some kind of spark of like want to, get into that. it's probably right. I wrote my superhero book like years later. Uh, uh, which if you're curious about my book, like I made a video, like a separate video about that, so you can check it out on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/talkativecarl. If you want to like me to like see the book cover and briefly talk about the plot, at least summarize plot and stuff like that, you can check out the video. But the book's name is Epic Tales of the Emerald Avenger, a superhero book. And just a little over 100 and some change pages, so it's not excessively long. But you can buy off Amazon or Barnes and Noble's website. So yeah, definitely check that out. It'll be greatly help me and like get that kind of support, because like I love writing books. I'm trying to find like I'm a very creative person. I'm trying to find like a decent like publisher, because the one I had to help make this book very shady. Don't want to work any further with them. That kind of thing. It's always like scammers out there, and it's like it's hard to find like you know uh, sorry, thought y'all something. It's hard to find like honest to goodness like you know publishers and stuff like that. But I digress. So he's in the cabin suffering from writer's block, depression, and he's just with his dog Chico. Knocks on the door, and here comes like John Turturro giving this very overly dramatic accent of a southern John Shooter from Mississippi. Really that southern drawl in Mississippi. And he probably accused more of plagiarism. Now, this movie, well, the story itself, the book this movie is based on, Stephen King created based off real life events that happened in his life, where there's a couple of people in the past that had a long ago accused him of plagiarism. In fact, the book Misery, somebody broke into his house, and his wife caught. I think it was a guy, and claiming that King plagiarized the story off of his aunt, what she wrote, which is all was false. But this leads to him writing this book based off of some weirdo come knocking on the door accusing more of plagiarism. But of course he amped up the creep factor in the story. He hands well, he didn't. He tried to hand Mort the manuscript of his work called Sowing Season, while Mort's story is called Secret Window. Mort, dismisses his claim, tells him to go fuck off. So he says, "I'll be back," and then he leaves the manuscript on his porch and drives away. Mort grabs it, didn't even bother really read it yet, and just tosses it in the trash. Hours later, while he's trying to start working on his new book, he has a maid for a cabin, and I'm pretty sure there's writers out there who do exceptionally well, especially someone like Stephen King. But it's like, yeah, you gotta. I mean, I'm not sure what Amy does for a living, It's never addressed. It doesn't really matter. But he must, his books must do exceptionally well because the house they share together is freaking huge. I mean, it's not like like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air house or anything like that. But I gotta say, it's almost the same size, like roughly somewhere between like Kevin McAllister's house from Home Alone and the what was the other one I had in mind? I just blanked on it. Uh, uh, it just left my mind just a second ago. But it's like it. Oh no, I just remember. Follow the Bride, which two movies I reviewed up on the channel, which you can check out as well. YouTube.com/talkativecarl. And it's like so the house is somewhere between those two sizes, and it's like it's only you two in the house. Why you have a house that freaking big? I mean, I kind of get it with the McAllisters, and I kind of get, well, I'm more so get it with like Steve Martin's character in Follow the Bride. He got like a wife and two children, but even still, it's like uh 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 it's still like too big for just four people. He could like cut that size half, the size of the house by half. With Kevin McAllister's family, it's like sure, like people always suspect like the father must do something shady to afford a house that big in the burbs, but especially the burbs of Chicago. But it's like, yeah, sure, you might have people visiting, so you have enough rooms for everybody. Well, clearly not enough because Kevin has to sleep in a freaking attic. But when the other extra family members are not there, it's like I think there's a sister, but definitely the older brother, then Kevin, and then the two parents. It's like five of y'all. That's still too big of a freaking house. And in this movie, it's like it's just two of y'all at that time when y'all was together. So it's like it still doesn't make any sense to have a house that big. No matter how much money you make it from your books, you should have like at least half the size of the house. It should have like a modest house. And it's like it's weird in these movies. You have like people with crazy big ass fucking houses, and no matter what job you have, unless you're a rapper or a actor, A-list actor or something like that, you shouldn't really have a house that big for on a writer's salary. And it's like unless you got that fucking big of an ego, you should have like at the most half the size of the house in case you will decide to have children. Because unless you have a family of five, bare minimum, there's no reason to have a house that big. Any of the movies I just list, it boggles the mind to me. Maybe it's like a movie trope or something like that. That like just have big houses for unnecessary reasons. It's just I don't know if it's like a trope or not, but it should be a trope, and this kind of need to move away from that because it doesn't make any goddamn sense. Anyway, so like I said, yeah, like a maid and stuff like that, and like she's kind of inept. She, I mean, she seems sweet, but I don't know. She only there for that one scene, and it's like, wow, you could have cut the scene out. Cut her out of the entire movie. It wouldn't matter. Not. He just, I guess, he needed like a somebody to bounce off of to say like, I didn't write this kind of thing. But she's like, not even like retaining what he's saying or how the gravity of the situation he's trying to lay bare to her. But then he ends up bumping into Shooter again, and he lays it out to Shooter that he wrote the story of Secret Window in 1994, and it was published a year later in 95. And by the time Shooter got his book published was in 97. So, as he laid out, I beat you by 2 years. So if anybody's gonna bitch about plagiarism, it's gonna be me. And I kind of like that line. So it's like, if anybody got a right to bitch about plagiarism, it's gonna be me. Uh, but then like, Shooters got aggressive with them. It's like they, like they can't be. So he agrees to leave Moore alone if he proves, shows him the magazine that published his work in the year he said. So he said he gotta pick it up at his wife's house. But later that night, he gives Moore 3 days. But later that night, he ends up killing Mort's dog Chico with a screwdriver, with a note attached to the wall saying he got 3 days. Which is like, okay, you already gave him 3 days. What's the purpose of killing his dog? Because he gotta be like, unless you call him like slacking or whatever, because he didn't even bother to go to the police or anything yet. So like, you just like, it's like trying to do the whole thing with like Godfather, with the horse's head. And it's like, you threaten him first, and if he does something across you, then the horse's head comes into play. You just went straight to the horse's head, or the dog in this case. So, God, I just like, that part seems like out of whack to me, but I guess it kind of fits to the theme of what's going on as you see later on in the film. But that's when he goes to his private investigator, Karish, and it's been hinted at, in the first act, that there was a situation with Mort plagiarizing somebody else's work on a different book, which I don't believe he actually got in trouble for legally, but it is something that probably is like a stain on his like probably reputation. So the PI, agrees to like help him on this situation like he did before. So he tried to go to the house to pick up the his copy of the magazine, but he refused to go inside because like not only Amy's there, but Ted's there, so he ain't trying to deal with that. And him and Ted just going back and forth, and like Mort just getting these little jabs in about this guy, which is understandable. And granted, I mean, of course, I want to say there's nuances over time that came about, but I think we have a better understanding on divorcees, and when it comes to cheating situations and relationships, all that stuff has been like, it's been more consideration and thought process behind it just being all the guy's fault and blah blah blah. And if you look on that now, of course, this is like this movie came out. What was it came out in 2004, so it's definitely it's a long time. So you can't really look too hard on this relationship with a 2022 lens. However, there's been people in this situation like this where it's like, the guy kisses the wife sleeping around behind his back with a friend, no less. And I'm pretty sure there's things like that in the world. And it's like, now people would, understand, like, hey, uh, you know, well, I say people understand. I mean, because it's always like a running thing in movies like this, where it's like the guy is taking forever with signing the divorce papers, because obviously he's still vying to get her back in some on some level, like subconsciously, or at least he has hopes things work out, and she leaves Ted, but uh, I mean, I don't know how the divorce papers, or I don't know if they sign a kind of prenup or anything like that, but yeah, she should not get a fucking red cent, and like he should be more inclined to sign those papers than she would. But yeah, it's been 6 months. She wants to move on with this guy. She feels like you know, uh, I'm not, I'm not sure what led to the cheating. There's no excuse. She should have been more like an adult and, want to split in the first place before she just jumped in the sack with another guy while she was still legally married. And, you know, by and large, the position should be flipped. He should be more inclined to push forward with those divorce papers than she would if, I'm the same, realistically. But he's holding off, uh, and he obviously still harboring feelings. And it's just like this whole thing is kind of really put more out of sorts. So he decides to wait until I guess when they're not there to go get the manuscript. So he won't have to deal with all that because every time he's on the phone with Amy, he's always seems to end up in an argument. Clearly, their relationship, must have been like not toxic, but it's like, you know, maybe the spice between them kind of sizzled out or something, or she lost some kind of passion in the relationship. Whatever the case may be, there's no excuse for her to step out. She could have just been like an adult and just said she's not happy or something like that, or agreed to some kind of seeing a therapist or something like that. But whatever. Like I said, over time we understand better and appreciate that. Hey, there's more to this than, hey, there's a reason behind the cheating, and it's good to see like a lot of movies put the guy in the position of the one stepping out, and it's a nice little change of pace to see women fuck up too. I just kind of wish it was like a little more. Uh, well, Ted mentions like he apologized and stuff like that, but she should be like, I don't know. I want to say bend over backwards to uh, make more happy, or show how sorry she is. But I don't know. She seems a little. It just carries on like a relationship where he the one stepped out, where she's like, you know, she cares, but she's ready to whatever. I want to, blah blah blah. And it's like, you seem like you're not sorry what you did to this man. Because unless he was beating on you, which it doesn't seem like it, no. But anyway, uh, uh, Mort shows up at his house, sees the PI there, say he checks everything, and nobody's there. It's kind of funny where he asks you gonna stay the night? Is like no, like unless you want me to. And then it's a nice little scene cut where he's like coming down the stairs, like nope, no monsters under the bed. It's like it was just funny. He literally had to have his friend, check stuff under the bed. It's like so freaking funny. But he mentions that uh, there's a possible witness of somebody who saw a shooter speaking with Mort, was this guy named Tom Greenleaf, who passed by during the scene where Mort is explaining about the year difference to Shooter. So he points out that the guy shows up at this diner at 9 a.m. so he can meet him there. So that's what he's gonna do the next morning. And of course, then Shooter shows up. You know, uh, almost like 10 minutes later after the guy left, was super convenient. Uh, and you know, just explaining to him like he's, you have still more time to get this proof. Uh, and like we don't want any cops and nobody interfering with our business. Blah blah blah. So, um, then of course Mort did go to police after, especially after the dog got killed, and like the sheriff there seems so. It's like I want to say it's all Stephen King uh, based movies, but more often than not, like the police officer. This is probably just movies in general. I wouldn't say it just by and large. They really make like the police, especially the sheriff, so inept. Well, and this is another trope that's kind of like annoying that I noticed. It's like cops don't behave like fucking cops. Uh, and it's like I'm hard pressed to remember police behaving in a tactical way and responsible way. I think off the top of my head, what I can probably eke out as a memory of an example, maybe in the first Venom movie when Venom was in that uh building after he exits the elevator and like the cops come in and like that seems a little bit more you know logically sound of what like well at least SWAT officers I guess would behave, but that's about of an example best of an example I can think of that seem proper. But I'm pretty sure there's other examples. But by and large, it's usually inept stuff. Anyway, uh, 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 the next day, because Mort agrees to, meet up with uh, the PI to talk with Greenleaf about the situation. But he overslept. He shows up at the diner, was looking for them. Nobody seems to seen either one of them. So he goes back home. He gets a call from Shooter, telling him to meet him at this little remote spot. He goes down this pathway and sees Greenleaf's car with Greenleaf dead in the driver's seat and the PI dead in the back seat. Both with there's a screwdriver in Greenleaf's head and like a hatchet in the throat of the PI. Like I said, it's like the wise, competent black guys in Stephen King stuff seems to be biting the dust. I want to say it's like I don't know how many black people are in any of the Stephen King's work, but the few that I've seen, a lot of them bite it big. I think The Shining was the most egregious one. But anyway, Shooter shows up, tells him like he tied Mort to those bodies using his own tools to kill these guys because he said no interfering with our business. They was going to interfere in our business, so I had to get rid of them. So Moore had to get rid of the bodies because there's no way he can. Nobody else beyond Greenleaf had seen Shooter, so he had to get rid of the vehicle and put it in the quarry. Well, earlier in the second act, it was suspected. At least the PI was trying to help more piece these things together, like where this guy could have come from. They suspected that maybe Ted probably hired Shooter to possibly like scare him off into signing the divorce papers and blah blah blah. But you know, Amy's house burnt down with the possible proof that Mort needed. And when they was going over with the investigators about like, you know, insurance and stuff like that, and the list of things that's lost, he had like a back and forth with Ted afterwards. By the way, this always bugged me in this film. Excuse me. It's just like, I don't know why it's stuck in my craw, but every time I see the scene, it's like I just want to like this is like, black guy in the elevator, seemingly like one of those messengers, biking messengers or something. That's like a lot in New York. I'm not sure how much nowadays, but Amy Mort and this guy is in the elevator, and the guy just, as soon as like they go to ground level, the guy just bum rush, between the two of them right out of there, and it's like, you rude motherfucker. It's like, you gonna say excuse me, or you just wait for a hot fucking second while they walk out first because they was standing right in front of you. They should be the first ones out. Then you can leave. You just like, you got your little headphones on and chewing your dumbass bubble gum. Like, you rude asshole. It's like, like anybody else, should have like, I would have took off my doggone shoe and bopped his ass in the back of the head. I wouldn't go that far, but that always bugged me. Like, dude, I mean, I remember watching this with my brother and a cousin of mine when we was, when I was like my early teens, and it was like, slightly younger than me, and we all was like, this dude is so rude. I was like, whoa. But anyway, I just want to point that out because that scene always bugged me. And I was like, that was so weird. But I mean, like, maybe it was like, I doubt they even brought it up. Even if I watched like a live commentary of like the director and whatnot, and I don't know, they might have not even addressed this guy just doing that, but I would have addressed it. Like, why the hell this dude, this glorified extra, just bum runs past these two actors, in such a rude fashion, and just couldn't wait for a hot fucking second. Or at least, maybe it wasn't him, it was just directed that way, but there was no reason for that. But anyway, so he dissed the vehicle. He went to the post office to pick up the copy his literary agent, sent to them by express mail. And by the time he got home, he noticed the envelope was already open, and the specific pages he's looking for in that magazine has been ripped out. And he's then talking in his head. It's like, his own thoughts asking him, like, how is this possible? Just think about it. Like, how did he manage to get to this envelope to specifically rip out these pages before you got to it? Think about it. And Morris like, I don't know. And then this is when the twist comes in. Not like a M. Night Shyamalan level twist, but I guess kind of, sort of. It's where like things start like getting like unraveling. Which I know the green screen, I want to say, is wonky. It's okay at the time and really isn't like a big bother. Of course, we kind of came a long way since 2004, but it's kind of obvious green screen, but it's like more talking to himself, trying to piece things together. Like, the bruises that Shooter left on him are gone, even though it was very visible the other day. And it's like his inner thoughts is trying to tell him like, Shooter doesn't exist. You made him up, and you see like flashbacks of back when like him and Amy were together. They was like on like some kind of vacation, and he put on this little pilgrim hat kind of thing that you see Shooter where for most of the movie, and it's like he pretty much started him up. Like he did this whole southern accent. I'm a dairy farmer from Mississippi, and it's like his I guess like positive side, pretty much his conscience is trying to explain to him like, call up the cops, tell them to come pick you up and lock you up before you do any more damage. And of course, Morton is just not listening. He doesn't want to believe that the arson, the murders is all him. Uh, and this is where and this is a good like this part is like a good cinematography. Out of all the parts of the film, this part was probably my favorite part. The moment where he gets home and starts looking through the envelope and piecing things together up until like the end of the film. I think it was probably a good, I love this part of the film. Where Mort throws his phone at the wall, or not a phone, but a rock or something at the wall and leaves like a dent in the wall, which proceeds to crack and leaves a big trail along the house to the other end. Clearly clarifying that his mind is cracked at this point. And that's when the shooter just shows up and says like, I did what the thing that you always wanted to do, and I'm here for you to finish that, fix my ending to our story. And clearly, because of course back in this time we we labeled it as multiple identity disorder. Now we call it DID, dissociative identity disorder, where clearly from like I guess like all like stress and I guess the trauma of what having with like the I guess whatever happened with the last accusation of plagiarism, and I guess the dent with his like notoriety and public image, and then the whole situation with his wife cheating on him with their friend, and it's like I guess like all that stress kind of was overwhelming, which caused this identity to emerge, because those things aren't born; they will just emerge. It's kind of like which I also one of my earliest movie reviews was the Unbreakable trilogy. Split, is like Split and Moon Knight, which I also reviewed up on the channel, which you can check out. Those two, I think Moon Knight, after I watched Similar Therapy and they kind of did like a review on Moon Knight, and they point out like that is like the perfect example of how people with DID truly because writers did their homework. That's clearly how they would function in real life, and that these people are probably like the most logical ones to identify themselves as they and them. That probably would be more apt of the use of they and them above probably almost anybody else. I mean, not to say like you can't self-identify as they and them if you feel like a they and them, but people with DID would probably be more like logical to use that label. But as the therapist there mentions that where Split got wrong, even though like James McAvoy and Oscar Isaac did phenomenal work insofar as like representing multiple identities, Moon Knight handled it better so far as like because as they point out, a lot of movies when they're dealing with these type of things always has like a personality that seems like a homicidal maniac or something like that, which is very apparently very rare of a situation. It's not that different from any other person that could easily be like a serial killer or something like that. There are people, you know, in the same body that just like any other person, it could be a coin flip. You don't know. You don't have to be a person with DID to be like a possible uh, psychopath or killer or whatever. Like, uh, and it's just like this in particular is one of those other examples I imagine where it's like, oh, shooter is like a identity that is a killer, which is just done for a movie or book for drama's sake. However, I probably think they would allow therapists will agree that, first of all, the identities aren't born, they just manifest. But typically it's usually, from what I understand, it happens when in general, I guess I want to say all the time, but in general it happens with like, when you're a young kid dealing with like a heavy trauma, when something like this might happen. But I'm not sure about how often do full-grown adults manifest in a different identity. And this day and age, if you have DID, it isn't something that you need to fix, because just like in Moon Knight, the personalities can live in harmony. You know, in the identity that manifests doesn't need to go away. They can just live a healthy life in one single body. It's perfectly fine, which is pleasing to know. And it's like because movies tend to dramatize just for drama's sake that one of the personalities has to be some kind of bad guy. And it's not always that case. From what I understand from these therapists, it's like it's rare. It doesn't mean it's probably out of the billions of people in the world, the likelihood probably can happen, but it's very, very low. So you shouldn't be, uh, uh, making people diagnosed with DID seem like possible killers or something like that, because that isn't good for them, and you don't want them be looked at like suspects or anything like that. That's just the same way with people who might have like a uh, uh, psychopathy or something like that. It's like just because they didn't have that kind of empathy as other people would have in general, doesn't mean they're possible killers. They just can't really like empathize, but they're still people that live day-to-day lives, and it's just like they have an interest to go out and just start murdering people. That's not something you should stereotype either. But anyway, so more now completely, I want to say, merged with Shooter. Uh, uh, I want to say merged, but maybe like a little bit more like chair is like about to, I feel like it's about to fall off. Uh, uh, but come to Shooter's way of understanding about how the story is more important than anything else, and getting rid of these distractions. He, because Amy shows up to finally, get these divorce papers signed, and she made the stupid decision to go there without, Ted. But he shows up, like a little bit after she did. Mort, you know, grabs a shovel. He ends up killing both of them. Catch them both by surprise, and then kill them both of them. Uh, Sometime later, uh, Mort is now pretty much, is feared in the neighborhood town, pretty much shunned, making everybody super uncomfortable. This woman who worked at the post office, who thought he was cute, now is like all fidgety and like, because now it's like the people that is tied to him are missing, suspected dead, and he's the likely suspect, but there's no evidence linking him. So now it's like, the sheriff had to come by as you see him cooking a bunch of, boiling a bunch of corn, and he got braces now because mostly throughout the film he's doing this thing because it's like, I guess, someone with like jaw. It's kind of like a nervous tick at first, but I guess it's like, something wrong with his jaw that he had to like get braces to straighten out. He's writing a new. He's a little more happier. He's about to write wrap up a new book, and uh, the movie narrates about how like uh, something like I uh, uh, it's blah blah blah. Town Downey said, "Well, eating another ear of corn from a steaming bowl. Even in time, even her death will be a mystery, even to me." And he still, you see the hint of that southern drawl in that dialogue, knowing that Shooter is a part of Mort's, is a part of Mort now. And uh, as he's narrating that last bit of dialogue, it's making me hungry for some ear of corn now. The screen pans out the window and to this like a little patch of corn that's growing in the yard, and the screen goes to black, insinuating that he buried. This is kind of smart, but like I said, after watching like Dexter back in the day, it's like, man, that is kind of sloppy. Like, there's no reason why anybody would suspect there's a possibility that he buried like any dead bodies there if he's a murder suspect. They can easily get a warrant to search the grounds, but whatever. But there's like an alternate scene from the DVD. Well, not the DVD, but I remember they included that because I watched this on FX a long, long time ago, where like they included like the alternate scene where you actually see the rotting corpses of Ted and Amy, underneath the earth, where on top where he's like, planting the where he planted the corn. Uh, in the book, however, that's where that's probably where King would not like, because in the end of the book, Ted and Amy get the jump on Mort and have to kill Mort. And Mort dies in the book, uh, while in the movie it's flipped. Now, I don't, because I didn't know until like maybe like a few years later after I first saw the film about like the different ending to the book. But I was like, I was comfortable for a while with the movie's ending, but I, I wouldn't mind had, to have a more happier ending where, because even though more for the longest he was the protagonist, he was our eyes in the film. We are drawn to him and his perspective, and to have him turn out to be the overall villain, uh, it's a nice little twist. I usually appreciate movies like that if it's done properly. But yeah, I wouldn't mind to have like King's version of the ending, and I think a lot of people would be a little bit more. I'm not sure how people like, cause the movie. Uh, some people like thought this movie was pretty okay. It's very mixed. It's not like uh, you know not terrible at all. It had a budget of $40 million and raked in the box office of 92.9 million. So it did pretty solid at the box office. Uh, so yeah, I mean, like I said, like I could have taken either ending. I think like maybe people probably be more happy with like King's version of the ending. But let me know in the comments below what you thought of Secret Window. Did you read the book? Did you prefer King's ending compared to the movie's ending? And yeah. And let me know like what was your favorite Johnny Depp films, because like obviously the Pirates films, a lot of people's favorite Johnny Depp films. But yeah, you know, Jack Sparrow is like easily the number one as far as like favorite performance. I also like his with this, obviously I like this performance in here. John Turturro in this is very very good, because John Turturro really blends well in whatever role he's in. Just like in like the Batman as like Carmine Falcone, he blends seamlessly in that. You half the time you can barely tell. Uh, this he blends so well. Even like something as slocky as the Transformers films, he was pretty good. But John Turturro is like it's amazing at his work. I know I've seen other John Turturro films. I can't remember anything earlier than the role he was in the movie Anger Management with Adam Sandler and Jack Nicholson. Because he was great in that. He was hilarious. Uh, but yeah, he's amazing in that. What else is Johnny Depp? Like Once Upon a Time in Mexico, his role in that was pretty damn good. Uh, of course, people love Edward Scissorhands. It's not exactly my favorite. I respect Edward Scissorhands, but it's not exactly my favorite. Uh, performance or favorite uh, Johnny Depp film. But other people really respect Edward Scissorhands. I'm not gonna. Willy Wonka should not be on anybody's freaking list. Maybe it's like you like it ironically or something. I don't know. But yeah. Uh, I will see you guys in a little bit. I want to do a quick review of Werewolf by Night, which I thought was going to be like a TV series, but it was just like a special 50-minute or so feature film on Disney Plus. So that was a nice surprise. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you guys.